This is the incredible story of Captain Robert Hayes and his final flight. America in the late 1960s was changing fast. Jetliners were everywhere. Airports that once welcomed slow propeller planes were now filled with shiny jets that could cross the country in hours. The old piston engine aircraft were being retired. One of the last still flying was a Douglas DC-6, and one man was about to take it on its final journey. From the start, danger was waiting. The forecast showed a winter storm moving across the Midwest. The engines roared, the ground shook. As the DC-6 lifted off from Idlewild Airport in New York, the sound of propellers cut through the cold February air. Hayes opened his old leather logbook and made a note, 10:15 a.m., final flight. The plane climbed into the clouds. At first, the journey seemed calm. The sun shone over Pennsylvania. Passengers chatted, proud to be on board. But trouble was already forming ahead. Across Ohio and Indiana, the storm was building strength. Winds picked up, snow was falling, and lightning flashed inside the clouds. And now, for the first time, doubt crept into Hayes's mind. Could he really do this? Or was this crazy idea going to end in disaster? To find out what happened next, stay tuned. By the time the plane reached Indiana, the storm had grown into a wall of chaos. Snow blasted across the windows. Wind shoved the plane side to side. Passengers grabbed their seats as luggage shook in the overhead racks. The DC-6 groaned as if it knew it was flying against time itself. Hayes listened to the steady beeping of warning lights. One fuel tank wasn't feeding properly. If it failed completely, the plane would not have enough fuel to reach Denver, the next stop. His co-pilot wanted to divert south. Hayes refused. He repeated the same words he had said for years. We finish what we start. The storm grew worse. Over Chicago, visibility dropped to almost nothing. Lightning cracked across the sky. The radio cut out. For nearly 30 minutes, Hayes was alone with his instruments. Every move had to be exact. One mistake and the DC-6 would spiral down into the fields below. Inside the cabin, fear spread. Some prayed, some cried. Others whispered that this might be the last time they ever saw the ground alive. But Hayes kept his focus. He knew panic could kill faster than the storm. He pushed the throttles forward. The engine screamed. The plane clawed its way through the blinding snow. Then disaster struck. One engine sputtered. Flames burst from the exhaust. The crew scrambled, cutting fuel flow to stabilize it. For a moment, the engine coughed, then caught again. Relief was short-lived. Ice was forming on the wings. Hayes ordered power adjustments, forcing warm air across the metal to break the ice. Every second was survival. Finally, after what felt like hours, the DC-6 broke free into calmer skies over Missouri. The passengers cheered. They thought the worst was over, but Hayes knew better. The Rockies were waiting. Mountains didn't care about history. They only cared about survival. As the DC-6 flew over Colorado, darkness fell and the Rocky Mountains stretched out below like jagged teeth. Snow covered the peaks and the winds roared through the passes. The plane was in trouble. Fuel was running low. One engine still wasn't stable and the plane was getting heavy and tired. But Denver's Stapleton Airport was their next safe haven. And so the climb began. The DC-6 strained as it climbed. The propellers spun at maximum speed. The engines roared louder than ever before. But the downdrafts were brutal. The plane dropped hundreds of feet in seconds. Passengers screamed as Hayes fought the controls, pulling back with all his strength. The old aircraft shook violently, threatening to tear itself apart. For a moment, it seemed like the mountains would win. But then slowly, the plane began to climb again. The snow whipped across the windshield and ice formed again. The altimeter showed they were too low. But just when it seemed all hope was lost, Hayes forced every ounce of power out of the engines, and the DC-6 shot up, clearing the peak by only a few hundred feet. In the distance, Denver appeared, its runway lights glowing through the snow. Emergency crews waited anxiously as the radio crackled to life. Controllers warned Hayes that one engine was failing fast. He had to land now. The DC-6 descended, crosswinds slamming the plane as it lined up with the runway. The passengers braced for impact. Hayes's hands were steady. His eyes were locked on the lights ahead. He whispered the same words he had written in his logbook, "One last flight." The landing was violent. The wheels slammed down. The tires screeched. The plane bounced and then steadied. Smoke rose from the brakes as the DC-6 roared to a stop. For a moment, no one moved. Then cheers erupted. Passengers cried. Reporters rushed forward. Captain Hayes opened the cockpit door. He didn't smile. He didn't raise his hands in victory. He simply carried his logbook down the stairs, away from the noise. That night in his hotel room, he wrote the final entry, the last flight over America. We made it, but the sky belongs to the jet age now. The DC-6 never flew again. It was placed in storage, then scrapped. But the story lived on. People remembered the storm, the mountains, and the man who refused to quit.